Welcome back to another video from the debate room. We are back with another separate video from what we do on the podcast. This is going to be every NBA team's most underrated player, as you can tell by the title. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys subscribe, like the video, share the video, so we can continue to keep growing. Follow our social medias up at the top of the screen. You can see those. We're gonna get right into it, man. We already recorded three videos today for the podcast. You guys will be seeing that pretty soon. We're going to start off with the East. I'll start off with the East, my underrated players for every single team. And I'm going to go again in order of where they finished last year as far as my order. Let me just pull this up real quick. All right. We can start off again with the Pistons. Was the worst team last year. Hopefully not the same thing this year. But their most underrated player is going to be Simone Fontecchio. With an honorable mention to Tobias Harris, because he's probably underrated at this point because of how much he's slandered. He's a good regular season player. He's a good player to have on this type of team. But Simone Fontecchio, I think, is a good player. He can play multiple positions. He can knock down a three. He can defend at a pretty good level, not high level, but I think almost any team in the league can use a player like Simone Fontecchio. I think he was a much-needed acquisition for the team and really, in my opinion, shined as soon as he came over from Utah and really made a name for himself as far as Pistons fans are concerned. So that's my most underrated player, Simone Fontecchio, because I think a lot of people don't even know who he is. Tobias Harris is probably underrated at this point because of all the slander, but people know who Tobias Harris is.
Yeah, I'm with you on both fronts. The thing I was going to say, Tobias Harris, people got to stop. Let me not say stop, but like playoffs matter so much that people think playoff play is the only thing that matters, and that's like how you're supposed to judge the player holistically. But there's certain players that like for 82 games, depending on the expectations of the team like they're good players. Like Julius Randle was bad in the playoffs, but through a regular season, I wouldn't mind Julius Randle in the lineup. Tobias Harris on a team in a regular season with no real expectations plays real good basketball. Even on a team with expectation, he was still 18, like 7 and whatever on solid efficiency for the Sixers. We've seen him on the Clippers team with no real expectations, damn near make an all-star game. Like he can do that. He can if he puts up 18, 7 and 3 on the Pistons with good efficiency, which he probably will do, it's going to be a big boost for the Pistons itself in general. People, he's bad in the playoffs. That doesn't matter for the Pistons. They probably not making the playoffs. But he's probably their second best player right now.
All right. For the Wizards, their next team up in the standings. It's pretty hard to pick a player from this team, in my opinion, because they don't have a lot of talent, in my opinion. I'm going to say, though, Corey Kispert is my underrated player for the Wizards. Career 38.8, career three-point shooter. I think people would think he had a lot better if he was on a solid or contending team. He offers you a lot off the ball. He's a really good shooter. He's really good at cutting as well. So Corey Kispert, not the best defender, not going to really rebound or play make for you, but as a role player, he can come in and be a specialist. So I think he's a bit underrated in that aspect.
I feel the same way about Corey Kispert. He's not quite Denny Avdia because, like you said, he's not the greatest defender. He's not going to play make or whatnot, but he provides a level of size and a level of shooting that would fit any team. Like he's a perfect type of role player that he knows his role. He's going to play his role. Good clip. I trust him to shoot out there. Like we've seen him shoot 40% from three in the season before. I think 5, maybe 6 attempts, something like that. That helps any team, especially a contending team. Like that's why I expect him to get moved. But he's of that like Denny Avdia mode where he's like underrated because he plays for the Wizards.
My next team is obviously the Charlotte Hornets. Underrated player, Trey Mann, man. He's been looking pretty well. He's looking pretty good so far since he was on the Hornets, and especially this preseason. He looked like he can probably be a solid 6-man for his team. More like that Jordan Clarkson type mode where they can just go get you a bucket off the bench, come in and drop a quick 12 to 15 and energize your team. I think OKC gave on him a little bit too early because one, he wasn't going to be able to get opportunity with the players they have, and they're ready to be a championship level team. He needs development, he needs reps, and I think on the Hornets he can get that. I don't think they really have too many other candidates on their team to be underrated, to be honest. Trey Mann, underrated player.
I agree with you. I agree with everything you said. A slight disagreement with the OKC. Like, it's the wording. Like, I don't think they gave up on him. I think they just realized what they have on their squad now, they weren't going to be able to play him for real. So I think they gave him an opportunity really more than they gave up to him. I think they gave him an opportunity to showcase what he could do on a Charlotte team that doesn't have a lot of talent. They may be guard heavy, but the guards that they have outside of LaMelo just aren't cracking it. Like Book Knight not cracking it. And Nick Smith ain't doing it for them. So Trey Mann, he's been here for a little bit. I think, obviously he got some skill. So I think OKC did him a solid by sending him to a team where he could showcase what he could do. And I agree, six man, he should be able to put up like 12 to 15 points per game and really, establish himself in the league.
For sure. For the Raptors, my underrated player for them is Kelly Olynyk. I think Kelly Olynyk is super underrated. What he's going to be able to bring you as a passer, as a shooter, can rebound the ball. He can play the 4 or the 5 as a small ball. He's not a great defender or nothing like that, but he's a serviceable defender. And I think Kelly Olynyk is super underrated. He's got paid by the Raptors. I think he can have a role on the actual contending team, not as a starter, but definitely a backup big. He would be one of the better ones in the entire league. Kelly Olynyk, with his passing, shooting, and positional value, I think is a underrated player in the league and in the East.
Yes, I feel the same way. He can shoot the pill, good passer, good connector. Stable enough defender. He's not like the great, like no rim protector or anything like that, but he's good positionally. He could do some switches down there, cause them havoc, get in the lanes and do things like that. For a team that still kind of lacks spacing, even though they have some semblance of shooting on the roster, just not like Grady Dick is not a consistent player that plays a lot of minutes. Quickly he's probably the best shooter in the lineup, but having somebody to space, especially next to Scotty Barnes, helps him a lot. And locking in Kelly Olynyk, whether obviously it's not a championship team, but for the development of that team with all those young players, I think he fits in perfect.
Yeah, really, really important to their half-court offense because his ability to space. And if they're going to run like they probably run quickly, RJ, Scotty,
Kelly and Jakob.
And for that lineup to work in the NBA in this day and age, you need someone to be able to space for like he is. So he's super important to what they're doing in Toronto this season. So the next team is the Nets, and it's going to be Dorian Finney-Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith is an elite defender, not stuttering, elite defender, especially on the wing. He's wasting away right now in the Nets. I think he can help any team. Every single year he's in trade rumors because of how valuable he is to the team. We saw that when he was on the Mavericks before he got traded in 2022 when they traded for Kyrie Irving, or 2023, whatever. 2023. Yeah, Dorian Finney-Smith is one of the best defenders in the league, one of the best role players in the league. And I think a lot of people don't see that because he's on the Nets.
I feel the same way, but for the Nets, it's in tandem. Him and Cam Johnson, like for the simple fact that if they get traded to a contender, the impact is instant. Like Dorian Finney-Smith for his defensive ability, Cam Johnson for his shooting, and like slight switchability. Same thing with Dorian Finney-Smith. Obviously, he can shoot he's a good corner 3-point shooter. Like he's strictly 3-and-D. Cam Johnson's 3-and-D. His defense not on that level, but he's still switchable. 6'9". He's stable. He's like if Keegan Murray, him, like they're like the same player to me, like of what they will do. Obviously, Keegan Murray at this point is a better defender. But I think the shooting on a contender is very valuable.
Okay, my next team is going to be the Hawks. Trae Young is the most underrated player probably in the entire NBA. He is clearly a top 20 player in this league, one of the best offensive players in the league, one of the best playmakers in this league. Is giving you 26 and 10 over the last 5 years, day in, day out. Has led his team to the Eastern Conference Finals, but he's heavily disrespected by the league as far as All-Star games, as far as the Team USA. He is clearly the most underrated player in the entire NBA, and he's the most underrated player on the Hawks.
Same, like I said, like you said, he's one of the most underrated players in the NBA. I think he's a top 25 player stamp. He's a walking, basically top 10 offense, carrying a middling squad. They fail to actually put real talent around him, but he still goes out there. He's one of the league leaders in points and assists produced every year, like always in the top 3 because he just has to carry. Obviously, there's some limitations, but you can't harp too much because if they did a better job around him, this team would be a lot better. But he's doing the best he got with what they given him.
For the Bulls, Zach LaVine. It's kind of like the same thing as Trae Young. Zach LaVine hasn't played in so long and has been on the Bulls where they haven't been a great team. When people forget how great he is. He is actually very versatile offensive player. He can ISO. He can handle the ball and pick and roll. He has grown over as a passer over his career. He's not a great one by any stretch of imagination, but he's one of the best off-ball players as a cutter, as a shooter. He's super efficient as well. Still very, very athletic. Zach LaVine is definitely a top 40 player in the NBA when he's healthy. He just hasn't been healthy over the course of his career. Some years, where he either misses time or has to play through injury, and it affects his play. But Zach LaVine is probably one of the most underrated players in the league. Also because of his contract, people forget how good he is, and he's very hard to move at this point. But Zach LaVine is that, and I think the Warriors probably should have traded for him. So yeah, that's my underrated player for the Bulls.
I feel the same way, especially with the contract point that you brought up. People tend to equate a player skill or level, spot in the lead or based on their contract. And just because the Bulls gave him $50 million, he's not producing what we think a $50 million player should be, doesn't mean he's not a good player. If you have a the best player that had a career year, broke out for you, obviously he's going to ask for the most money they could get from said team. So same like the Jaylen Brown situation. He got money. He got the money that he was able to get. Right. Obviously, if you know you can get this money, you're eligible for this, I'm going to take it. That doesn't mean he's supposed to be the best. This superstar top 10 player is just how CBAs work. But people forget Zach LaVine's 25 points per game, pretty much at this point stamp. Decent efficiency. He has his things getting to the line and things like that, but he can pretty much fit into any type of offense seamlessly because he has a skill set that works anywhere.
Next team up is going to be the Heat. Bam Adebayo, one of the most underrated players in the entire league. Another top 20 player, arguably the best defender in basketball, one of the best playmaking big men in basketball, one of the best screeners in basketball. People forget that 2 years ago he was the second best player on a championship level team, and also he was the best player rounds 2 through the finals. And offensively, he has these moments where he turns it on. I think he's improving as a three-point shooter, and people just undervalue defense as a whole, so they've just undervalued Bam because he's probably the best defender in the league, to be honest. When we talk about his versatility, his ability to guard the nail, guard in isolation, switch, and also just protect the rim, he sets a floor every single year with a team that's lacking in defensive help on the perimeter. So Bam is the most underrated player in the Heat.
Yeah, he's been the second best player really on 2 finals teams. He's that good. And I think especially now it might be on full display because he might not have to play full-time 5. If Kelly Ware could hit that 3-ball consistently and be able to space, I think you're going to see much more of Bam this year. He's been disrespected in Defensive Player of the Year talks. He lost to Marcus Smart, which I thought was kind of crazy. I'm not going to say Marcus Smart wasn't a good defender that year, a great defender that year, but like you said, rim defense is one of the most valuable. He provides that way more than Marcus Smart does. His switchability, things like that, just versatility. He provides that. His playmaking. This summer we've seen him be a little bit more comfortable playing next to a big, being able to really showcase what he could do as a passer. Him taking shots now. If he incorporates that into his game, he'll be on full display. This Miami Heat team will look a lot better for years to come.
The 76ers, it was kind of hard for this team, but I chose Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre is, I think, a slightly underrated player in this league. He can come in and provide a scoring punch. He competes on defense as well. Super athletic. He cuts. He moves off ball. He can be erratic at times and a little bit inefficient, but I think he's probably the most underrated player on this team. It's kind of hard for the Sixers. Considering what they have on the roster, but I'll choose Kelly Olynyk. When he was in Charlotte that last year, he averaged 20 on bad efficiency. But last year, especially in the beginning of the year when Joel Embiid was actually there, he was very, very serviceable. And he competed on defense in the Knicks series and also competed offensively. So I think Kelly Oubre is their most underrated player.
As crazy as it may seem, I probably think it's Joel Embiid. Like I understand, like I understand the playoff woes and things like that, but we saw what this team looked like last year without Joel Embiid, and what it looked like the minutes when he wasn't on the court in the playoffs in the first round, and it's just the drop off is just so drastic when you don't have him in the lineup. Obviously, he's a top 5 player. I think top 4. Well, I think top 3, but it's close. Yeah, it just was so crazy. I think this year, especially if he's not going to play the back-to-backs like they saying, that means you got a fresher Joel Embiid, and you're probably going to see a better Joel Embiid in the playoffs.
Okay, my next team is the Pacers. I'm going to do Ben Shepherd for the Pacers. He is a good defender for them, probably one of the best defenders on their entire team. He is a knockdown shooter as well. Coming from Belmont, I watched him in college. He is a really, really good player. And I don't think a lot of people know that, but it showed a little bit in the playoffs last year. Originally had TJ McConnell here, but I think people are kind of like, up with him, especially.
Yeah, they hip to him now.
They hit TJ. So I got Ben Shepherd.
That's a good underrated pick. That most people probably would have said Nembhard and things like that. I'm gonna probably go with Aaron Nesmith. Mm-hmm. For what he does in the lineup, as far as taking the best player on defensive matchups, especially like a perimeter player, his hustle, his grit, his toughness, his willing to go back in no matter if he gets scored on, if he gets cooked, whatever. It's a great plus for a team that's not a great defensive team. At least you got somebody out there that's gonna try. And then him up in his play on offense, the 3 balls gotten better. Him as a cutter, as basically as a play finisher, has gotten a lot better. That's like for him, like he like if Stephon Castle is like that's his floor as a player. They're about to similar size. Obviously, Neese was a little bigger, but if that's your 4th or 5th best starter, then I think you're in a good shape. And that's because of what he has done for this team.
My next team is going to be the Magic, and that's probably going to be Jonathan Isaac. He's by the minute he's one of the best defenders in the entire league, and he provides a lot of positional versatility for the Magic. He obviously has issues staying healthy over the course of his career. I think last year was his first year staying healthy in a very long time, and I think because of that, people forget how good of a defender he is and what he can do for you offensively. He can lock down basically anybody in the league. Damn near 1 through 5. So, Jonathan Isaac, most underrated player for the Magic.
I would say I understand that, but that's probably based off since they don't see him a lot. Since you don't see him a lot, based off his injury history, they got to be careful with him. It's like I wish we could play. He could play more. We could see more of him. But I kind of think it's at this point it's probably becoming Franz because the bad shooting year coupled with the bad Game 7, playoffs in general, just put a sour taste in people's mouth. People forget, he's still one of the best drivers and finishers in the league. He's one of the better playmakers at his position, one of the better defenders. Outside of shooting, he provides so much more, and we know he can shoot the ball. He probably just went through a slump. It was probably just a bad year. Shooting for, people that are not specifically shooters, kind of could be volatile, could go up and down. I think people just harp too much on him just shooting bad for a year, and obviously the playoffs, like I said, playoffs get weighed heavily. But I think if Franz is just an average shooter, everything else is just so good that it's you could kind of breeze past the bad year that we had, the outlier year so far that we've seen.
I agree. That's a good take. For the Cavs, I'm gonna go Isaac Okoro. Last year, Quiley was one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league. He shut down some of the best offensive players in the league. You go down his matchup chart, he shut down a lot of them. His 3-point shooting also improved, which is very much needed for this team. Is really good as a cutter and stuff like that in this offense. Pretty athletic. He has some limitations offensively, but I think he's probably one of their more underrated players, either there or Evan Mobley, because I don't think people know how good Evan Mobley is truly. So,
yeah, I'm with you with the Evan Mobley. Offense between playoffs and offense, that really drives a lot of people's thought process on how good a player is. Evan Mobley was just like a year or two ago was like in Defensive Player of the Year race. We seen him in the playoffs, locked down, Paolo for stretches. We seen him go, go crazy, like not go crazy, but in that Celtics series, he held his own. He did his thing. Like we've seen him like for stretches, especially with Jared Allen off the court. We've seen what it could be if he's locked in and really puts his mind to it. So like I think Evan Moore is definitely underrated at this point, even though he shouldn't be.
Okay, my next team is going to be the Bucks. Damian Lillard. I think he's the most underrated player on the team. And I'm not gonna lie, bro, because when I rank this player, it doesn't feel right to rank him as low as I do. Especially on point guard list on when you're gonna rank players as the top 50 players in the league. Damian Lillard had one down year. He had one down year coming off arguably probably the best year of his career in 2023. Like statistic wise, and people have dropped him outside the top 30 at the back of the top 30 when it was damn near consistent. He was a top 15 player last year. He had one down year and he fell that much. And he also was pretty good in the playoffs. His second half was an issue, but they didn't have Giannis. And he got hurt and the rest of the team got hurt, but he didn't get a chance to, shake his playoff narrative. But Damian Lillard is probably the most underrated player on this team.
I can see that. I understand that, and I'm all for it. Like it sounded like I was about to be against it. Dame's bad season, and this is pretty common when you talk about Hall of Famers, first ballot. We talking about a top 75 guy, even though I don't think he should have been. Because I think there's about 3-4 players that could have went ahead of him or should have went ahead of him. There's no doubt in the numbers, especially in the regular season. His down year was most people's best year. We're talking about most people's there's Hall of Fame point guards that wish they had a Dame year that Dame had last year. But obviously we know there was certain things that happened that had nothing to do with basketball that happened last year that obviously could mess with somebody's mindset and ability to perform, and obviously family's more important and things like that. Obviously on the court you'll be thinking about other things. You're not totally locked in because we're human. He's human. I know fans like to think that players just got to go out there and perform no matter what because of their job and they're paying all this money to come see you. But they're people just like us. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like us. He went through some things that most people would do even crazier things for, and it affected his play. And he still was able to show up. I think this year he's a year removed. He had time to process. He understands what it is, and I think he's going to come out here and show out.
For the New York Knicks, I have either Mikal Bridges or Deuce McBride. I'll probably go with Mikal Bridges. I think people have forgot how good of a role player he can be. His last 2 seasons in Brooklyn left a sour taste in people's mouth, and he was just out of place. He's not a 1. He's not a 2. He's probably not a 3. But he is a very good off-ball player. He can come off screens, knock down shots, knock down threes off the catch. He can cut, and I think is still one of the better perimeter defenders in his entire league. He just wasn't able to show it with the offensive load that he had. I think Mikal Bridges is underrated.
Same, and I'm one of those people that like really talk down on Mikal Bridges because I like Mikal Bridges on the Suns. Like I was a Mikal Bridges fan on the Suns. Once he moved to the Nets, it's not like as soon as he got traded, I wasn't a fan, but it's just the way people talked about him was just not what it's just not. I hate when people do things that they know they take away all context. Him as like a third best player, he provides everything that you need. Which is third best player. He's a glue guy, Iron Man, willing defender, cuts, catch and shoot. He could attack closeouts. He could do everything that you need as a glue guy to do, and then some. Like he's like a glue guy plus. Like he just fits into a lineup. So even on this Knicks team, he's the third best player. Some nights he might be the fourth best player, depending on how good OG is just locking somebody down that night, or how good he's shooting the pill that night. But 3-4, whatever. I think Mikal Bridges is better than him. But he's in a perfect role where like he gets to play off somebody that garners a lot of attention, and when he gets to play off somebody that garners attention, he looks very good. And he's in an even better role than he was with the Suns.
Last team was the Celtics, and the most underrated player on the Celtics is Xavier Tillman. Xavier Tillman is an elite defender, an elite defender. And I don't know how real that three ball is that he's been showing in the preseason, but if that's real, that is dangerous. I think a lot of people talked about Boston's big depth, especially with Kristaps Porzingis being out for the first 3 months of the season. I think Xavier Tillman, at least defensively, is a very, very good solution. Offensively, it's kind of nasty. I'm not gonna lie, but Xavier Tillman is. I don't think people know that he's one of the best defenders in the league. He truly is an elite defender. Offensively, they don't need him to be much because they have a lot of talent on a roster, for sure. So I think Xavier Tillman is the most underrated player on Celtics.
100% agree. 100% agree. For the first couple of months of the season, well, first month and a half, maybe 2 months of the season, he's going to really have a chance to showcase what type of play he is from the defensive aspect, of course. And then, like you said, with the people, if that becomes a real thing, along with him being able to, finish at the rim off lobs and things like that, and him being a great hustle player, he'll be able to show the world who he really is, which helps because he's on the Celtics, which is always going to garner eyes all through the season because it's the Celtics, whether it's hating eyes or fan eyes, people watching Celtics, he's going to be able to showcase something every night. And I think it's going to be very important for them keeping things afloat until Kristaps get back.
All right, let's move on to the West, and let's hear your underrated players, Q.
All right, I'm gonna go on unorthodox in my order, but I'm gonna start with the Denver Nuggets. Max alluded to this in our Western Conference preview, but I think the most underrated player is Julian Strawther. Through summer league and a little bit of preseason, he's been. I guess they, obviously they have to rely on their youth. They're gonna need him to shoot them threes because they don't. Even though they shoot a good percentage, they don't shoot a high volume of threes consistently. They had Julian Strawther basically putting like eight threes a game. So he was shooting at a decent clip. They're going to need him to do that. And as long as he's a willing defender, because we've seen some defensive ability from him, especially in the passing lanes and things like that, active hands, I think he's going to be very important for the team that, can maintain their contender status.
Yeah, Julian Strawther, I think is, I will always mess with him. Coming out of college, out of Gonzaga, I think he's going to be able to provide spacing for the team. When they just lost KCP, they definitely gonna need that. I don't think Christian Ron or Peyton Watson are going to be able to provide that. I'll probably go with Peyton Watson, though, because of how great of a defender he is. I think people don't realize how great of a wing defender Peyton Watson is. He does really well against players like Shea, PG, all those type of wiry wing/guards. He can guard multiple positions, too. Really good shot blocker. Peyton Watson, they call him Peyton Swats, and I think he's probably the most underrated player on this team. And if he can improve his offensive game as far as knocking down threes, he definitely gonna be able to find a role in his team and help Denver get back to championship status.
100%. Next, I'm gonna go with the Sacramento Kings. I think the most underrated player is DeMar DeRozan. I understand the gripes you got, playoff play, him not being a shooter, I guess not willing to really shoot the three ball. But we've seen him operate on teams with not a lot of spacing. He's still on a team that doesn't have a lot of spacing. And we know for a fact he could go out there and get a bucket. He's an instant 25 points per game. Like, that's what he is. He's a bucket. He's a master of his craft. Now you got him and De'Aaron Fox, who we're talking about like two of the best clutch players that we've seen in the last 2 years. I think even though this team didn't need another offensive player, they needed defense, I think he still provides something for the team. There's something to be said about just having a talent on the team other than actual fit, but like, you could forego fit if you have the talent. I think he's just a talented scorer. Like, he will fit in cool with this Sacramento Kings team.
I think DeMar DeRozan is underrated for sure because of he played on the Bulls, but 2021 season he was really special. Last year, I think Kobe White was the shining star of the team. I'll probably go with Keegan Murray. He's a really, really, really good shooter. Regular golf ball player. He's a really solid player. I saw some people kind of overrating him. Some people were kind of overrating him a little bit because I think remember when people were talking about Lauri Markkanen possibly going to the Kings and they were like, no, because Keegan Murray is untouchable. Like, people be saying untouchable, so it kind of is a little bit overrated. But I think he's an underrated player in the grand scheme of things in the NBA because he also improved last year as a defender. He was probably their best defender outside of Keon Ellis last year.
He took the toughest matchups. He took it I think he took the toughest matchups for them all year. He performed well.
Yep.
All right. Next up, I got the Dallas Mavericks. Their most underrated player, the new player, is Klay Thompson. People have been shitting on Klay Thompson because of play-in game. A one-off, a one-game series. Anything can happen in one-game series. We see things like that happen in other, like football, things happen in one game all the time. Klay Thompson on the back half of the year was playing some of the better basketball that we've seen, in the last 2 years. He put up good numbers, and he's, like you alluded to in our Western Conference preview, he's going to be having some of the most open looks he's ever had playing with Luka Doncic on the court at all times. So I think he's the most underrated player. I think people, like I said before, playoffs matter a lot, especially playing like things like that. People would tend to weigh heavily without looking at content and things like that. I think he's their most underrated player.
I won't even waste time adding to that. I think you put that perfectly. He's definitely underrated. People, the casual fan thinks he sucks when you look at his numbers throughout the whole year as a composite year. It's pretty standard Klay Thompson stuff. And he also improved as a defender. Not saying not from what he was previously, but the first 2 years he came back from the injury, he was like below average. Last year he was actually a good defender on certain positions last season. So Klay Thompson is definitely the most underrated player.
The bigger threes and fours, he's able to open based on size. It's a different league. He could definitely hold his own lane, but it's the quicker guard thing. But it's you could work around that. Next up, I got the Portland Trail Blazers. This is one of those things I kind of found it hard, but I'm a key in on Jeremy Grant. His contract doesn't suggest so because his contract is hard to move, but I think Jeremy Grant one of those players that he's underrated because of the money, but people fail to realize what he can do, especially for a contending team. We've seen him on the Nuggets, like he can shoot the deep ball at a decent clip. We know he could defend if he's engaged, has decent size, could do things. I think if he was in a different role on a contending team, even though he didn't want to be, I think people would understand exactly the type of player he is.
Toumani Camara is my most underrated player on the Blazers. I don't think a lot of people know who he is, and he is a really, really great defender. Showed that last year, gave you 7.5 points. His three-point shot isn't there yet, but he's like a Swiss Army knife on their team, and I think he's probably one of the most underrated players on their team. They have a bunch of underrated guys, though, because they have a lot of good players. They just stay on the Blazers, and there's no one alpha to make that team a competent team.
True. People didn't think much of him, especially when they got there, beyond the AA trade and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, my next team up is the San Antonio Spurs. I think their most underrated player, which happened to be my breakout player, was Devin Vassell. With the Wemby hype, rightfully so. He takes the bulk of the attention from the Spurs. So people are really talking about Wemby, and then next up they're talking about Chris Paul and what he's going to be able to do for Wemby. But I think who gets lost in the sauce is Devin Vassell, who's damn near a 40% three-point shooter. Decent efficiency as a scorer in general. He's 19 points per game. He's solid, decent. He will get better. He's still a young player. He got room to grow. But I think with the Wemby height, I think he gets lost in the mix, and I think he's going to be one of their better players, especially if he's locked in for their future. I think he's going to be part of their future plans. I think he's going to just get better and better every year. He's one of my guys, so it's kind of biased. I love Devin Vassell.
I probably have to agree with Devin Vassell. I was gonna get on here and say Stephon Castle. I ain't do it, but nah. Devin Vassell is I think he has some deficiencies as far as like his shot selection and stuff like that. But he is definitely he's not a good defender, but he's a good team defender. I would say he has length and stuff like that. I think he's a good shooter. To be honest, and he's someone you could definitely want to have next to Wemby as a supporting piece going forward. I would say, whatever role he plays. But yeah,
I believe in this. Like you said, the shot selection is kind of nasty, but you get in a person like Chris Paul in there that helped that because he let him know like Chris Paul's seen it all, done it all. He's one of the smartest basketball minds the game has ever seen. So he's going to be able to let him know like what type of shots you should be taking because it's going to be the most effective. With the Lakers, it was hard for me specifically to find one like a underrated player because I think everybody's probably rated. I think some players actually get overrated. I think they probably one of the most underrated players probably is Anthony Davis. There's a lot of people that don't think Anthony Davis really is a top 10 player, but I think for this team and what he does as a player, like defensively, he's an anchor. Even though the team probably won't, as a whole, won't perform defensively, like in terms of ranking, I think his ability to just protect the rim is just like invaluable. I think if he's locked in, he could be one of the better, scorers in terms of point per game average. Especially playing next to LeBron James, he's gonna make sure he gets the ball. JJ Redick is in there. He's probably gonna emphasize getting Anthony Davis the ball, so you're gonna see probably a lot better version of Anthony Davis this year than you did last year. Even though Anthony Davis was great last year.
You say Anthony Davis is your most underrated player for the Lakers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people, I think a lot of people have him as a top 10 player, but he does get disrespected because people don't understand the value of his defense and also the burden he has as an offensive player. I'm going to go with Austin Reeves though. Was getting shitted on early in the year for his. I'm not gonna lie, that was me. I was a part of it. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't. I definitely was talking down him a little bit in the early part of the year, but he turned it on when Darvin Ham started playing him in the lineup with I think D'Angelo Russell, Roy, and him going to more offensive focus. He was really good to end the season, and I think a lot of people know about Austin Reeves, but he's still one of the more underappreciated players in the league for what he can do as a secondary ball handler, pick and roll operator, and spot up shooter as well.
All right, next we got the New Orleans Pelicans. Now I couldn't decide whether I wanted to make it CJ McCollum or Herb Jones, but I think in tandem, both of them are very underrated. CJ McCollum had a great year last year, and people are trying to push him to the bench because they got DeJounte Murray. Same thing also with Herb Jones in the same situation. It's one of them is trying to basically get put to the bench. It's not Herb Jones, obviously, because I guess they're trying to start him at center. But for CJ, like I said, he's not the who you want running your show, but he can still shoot the pill. The team that needs all the spacing they could get. And Herb Jones, he's probably the best perimeter defender in the league, if not top 3. He increased his shooting. He's a solid rebounder. He's got better at the playmaking. He's just an all-around great player on a decent contract. And he's a perfect glue guy. He would fit on every single team. I think he's going to be very important for this team going forward, especially if they end up moving on to BI.
I think, I agree with CJ McCollum. I'm not going to use ESPN as a reference, but I think they had him at the back half of the top 100.
I said that list was nasty.
No, it's terrible. We might react to it if it's still relevant by the time we get some time to do it. But yeah, CJ McCollum, he can be your tertiary creator, and he gonna provide you. He comes in when you need him to, especially down the stretch. He can get you ISO buckets, get you good offense. Not a great defender, not a great playmaker. He was playing out of position. He's not a point guard. I don't know why they was playing him there in some spaces, and he really been operating out of position for a minute now in New Orleans. But yeah, CJ McCollum is still a top 60, 70 player in this league for sure. So I think people that have any lower than that is underrated.
Next up, we got Minnesota. One underrated player for Minnesota is Julius Randle.
Not surprised.
And like I said, a lot of people's gripes with Julius Randle just happens to do with strictly playoff play, and I understand that's weighed heavily. But for what he's going to do for this team through 82 games is going to be very important because they're going to need that. Another dribble drive creator because they don't have a lot of that on their roster. He obviously the Timberwolves, they have other moves to make it. Helps that you got because he got 1 year left after this year. Or a player out they could trade him. It helps build the future for it and whatnot. But what he could do for them now, as a player, especially like bench slams and things like that, is invaluable. Especially since you don't have Cat no more, you need some type of other form of offense, and Julius Randle provides that.
Timberwolves. I probably agree with Julius Randle. He is.
You know who you want to talk about. I don't even know why you're doing this.
Who you talking about?
Rob.
Oh, no, I don't think Rob underrated. Well, I'm gonna stay away from rookies. I'm gonna stay away from rookies for the most part. But I think Julius Randle, the way he gets talked about is crazy. His performance isn't great, but you can add some context. In 2021, he's not a 1. He shouldn't have been the 1 in 2021. 2022, he was. I think they missed the playoffs. And in 2023, he was injured. And last year we didn't get to see him. So you apply context on some of his playoff performances, like we do with some other players. Then I'm not saying he's the greatest player performer ever, but he just
if it's necessary.
He's a guaranteed top 40 player in this league. Yeah, Julius Randle, underrated.
All right, next up we got OKC. Underrated player on OKC, I think it's Alex Caruso, even though he's very beloved.
Mm-hmm.
What he's gonna do for this team, like is just gonna be immaculate, especially with the lineups they're able to put out with him. He had a great shooting year last year. I'm not gonna say he's gonna replicate it, but since you can do that, it's gonna be hard to leave him open, and that still gives him a lot of space for other players to work, like Jalen Williams and Shea, who aren't the greatest 3-point shooters. Like Shea's not a great 3-point shooter. Jalen Williams is probably a little bit better than him, but they still like to operate and get their buckets kind of the same way. Like Jalen Williams is a great closer attack. He likes to get in the mid range. Shea obviously likes to operate in the mid range, down low, in the post and things like that. Him and Alex Caruso out there allows people not to key in down on him because obviously there was always somebody out there basically sagging off Josh Giddey to make sure they get down there and help, stick a hand in and things like that. I think Alex Caruso being out there in certain lineups, people will be hesitant to leave him. And then defensively, doesn't have to be said. What he's going to do for this team, especially for the price that they got him. I think it's said a lot, but I don't think it was said enough.
I want to say Alex Caruso because I think people know how good he is at this point in his career. I would probably go Aaron Wiggins or Isaiah Joe. They're two bench players, snipers. Aaron Wiggins is a decent defender as well. Offers positional versatility and is a good off-ball player. So I'll go Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins for that part for them because Alex Caruso, I would say he's underrated, but people know how people know how good. I don't think they know how good he is on offense, especially with the shooting and also the passing, what he does, and also off-ball play. Sometimes as a screener, as a cutter, people don't know about that.
As a crasher, he can't crash.
Yep, all that type of stuff. But yeah,
but Memphis, it's gonna sound crazy. But my underrated player is Ja Morant. I think the last year and a half has basically stained what Ja Morant has been able to do with this roster. Obviously, it's a little bit tweaked now. It's a little bit different, a little bit better. But we're talking about healthy Ja, one of the Memphis Grizzlies, when he became who he is. We're talking about a top 2 seed in the Western Conference. Again, I say the Western Conference, the harder conference. Ja Morant with no real spacing, no real, at the time, viable, real second option that, gave people a threat. Like Desmond Bane is that now. Like he had a year to grow and become better as a player, but before Ja was basically back in his offense by himself. I think he's going to come back and show people exactly who he is. Obviously, he's not fine in the West, but he's going to make his mark in the West again and let people know you're not coming into Memphis. It's going to be an easy game. You have to grit and grind. And Ja Morant is one of the most electrifying players we got in the league. He's going to be reminding everybody this year.
Yeah, Ja Morant is definitely underrated now. Some people don't even have him as a top 20 player. Last year, they were putting the likes of Tyrese Haliburton over him consistently. Definitely one of the more underrated players because he hasn't been in the spotlight for basically 2 seasons now. And he was injured last year. He's going to be able to come in this year and bring Memphis back to top 5 status in the West, I believe. At least it would stay healthy.
Next up, we got Houston. Houston was another team I kind of find it hard to find an underrated player for. If I want to pick a person, it's not like he's underrated, but I think people haven't the general consensus haven't came around to the idea of Amen Thompson. I think as another year under his belt, he's gonna show exactly what he's doing. Like you're talking about a great defender, obviously a good enough passer, great playmaker. He could attack downhill. If he gets better with the shot, obviously he's going to be a demon. I think eventually, sooner or later, they're going to realize they have to start him, whether it be at small forward in place of Dylan Brooks or just point guard straight up and, try to move off for VanVleet, like probably at the end of the year, something like that. But he's the talent is just unbelievable. It's going to be hard to just keep that on the wraps and not play him for more minutes and things like that because he's like a great player. I love him. Obviously, I love Asar too, but I think he's just better. He's in a better situation.
I think the most underrated player on the Rockets is Fred VanVleet. He was actually really great for them last year. And again, not to reference the ESPN list, but they had Jalen Green over him. And I think that's probably not – some people actually think that. that Jalen Green is a better player than him. He was their second best player last year. He was a table setter, averaged a lot of assists. And people were, and last year in Toronto, it got kind of nasty with his shot selection and how much he shot the ball. But he's still a pretty decent guard defender. He's still going to be able to table set and play make for them. And he was the veteran presence they needed last year, outside of what he can do on the court. So I think Fred VanVleet is one of the more underrated players in this league again now. And for the Rockets.
All right, next up we got the Phoenix Suns. My underrated player for the Phoenix Suns is Bradley Beal. Like I said, he's one of those players that the contract dictates what people think of the player rather than see what it is, holistically. He had a great season last year as a third option based off numbers. He was 18, like 5-5 on like damn near 50-40, I think like 80, 90, something like that. As a third option, he was solid. As long as he's able to stay on the floor, he's going to be able to produce. Preseason, they got him doing different things now. He's coming off the ball a lot more, pin downs, things like that, catch and shoot. He's becoming a willing defender again, based off the couple of games we've seen him so far recently. And I think that's obviously the Suns, they need people that don't want to just go ISO. They need people to do the other things, and he was able to do the other things, especially late. I think the playoffs, especially like with that last game where Anthony Edwards basically sunned him, I think people like get nasty with that. But I think he really was like underrated because people forgot to look at the numbers and what he was actually doing on the court rather than looking at what he's getting in his his checking account.
He also couldn't stay healthy last year. I agree with Bradley Beal. So people, forget about him. They look at the contract. They look at the expectations that the Suns have for themselves. And really, it's kind of like championship or bust them every year because of the money they're spending on their roster. And people forget how good Bradley Beal is you put him as a tertiary option in that type of role. He's going to be one of the best. Maybe I don't know. I'll have to go through it, but probably a top 5 third option in the entire league. I'll have to go through it though, to be honest. But I'll stand by that right now until I get proved otherwise. But yeah, that's my that's my underrated player. I agree with
you. Next, I got the Warriors. My underrated player for the Warriors is DeAnthony Melton, if he's healthy, because he provides a lot. Not a lot of what Clay obviously provides because that's a different type of shooter, but as a defender, point of attack defender, and if he's healthy, he can shoot the pill. I think he, does enough to fill the gap, especially in a lineup next to Steph Curry and things like that. I think he's able to take on a different defensive load. I think he's able to shoot. I think he's a good connector. I think he do a lot of things that the Warriors need, and as long as he's on the court, he's always going to be a positive.
My underrated player for the Warriors is Draymond Green. I don't think people realize how he's still one of the best defenders in the league. His impact is felt every single time he does something dumb because without him, they completely fall apart on both sides of the ball. He's extremely important to their offense, extremely important to their defense. He makes a lot of their lineups just work. He had a career year shooting the ball last year. Draymond Green is probably the most underrated player on the Warriors.
I would say that, but it's like I feel like people should know. Maybe that be my fault for thinking people understand, but I think people know how important Draymond Green is. I think people understand how much how important Draymond Green is more than Draymond Green understands how important he is at this point. I think that's why people are harping on it for things because I think people understand what he means for this team, especially without Clay. He's the last of the Mohicans, basically. And I think you understand what he does as a playmaker, as a defender, basically, the rock for the team, the enforcer, everything. He does everything that you don't want your best player to be doing. And I think that's, very important. But I ain't going to have too much with that. For Utah, it's hard to find an underrated for Utah, especially for a team that's trying to lose. But I think it would probably be Jordan Clarkson for me. Because I think he provides a lot of things off the bench that they probably could get from somebody on their roster if they develop them. But as of right now, Jordan Clarkson is the spark. When you want to be bad, you have to be able to be bad in style. And Jordan Clarkson allows you to be bad in style because he's able to do some things, some highlight things, some dribbles, some hot games, especially his value as a trade target eventually for another team that's trying to get a little bench piece, a little push, a little spark. I think he provides that for a contender, and he provides that for a team like this that still needs to look like they're trying to compete.
The most underrated player on the Jazz is going to be Colin Sexton. I think a lot of people still don't know how good he is and what he was able to do.
I ain't gonna lie, I forgot he was on the team.
Yeah,
like that's
I'm
totally
not gonna lie, I wasn't even hip to Colin Sexton and what he's able to provide as a probably secondary or tertiary playmaker. He can still get to the basket really well. His 3-point shot has improved over his career. He's gonna give you effort on defense. He's not a great defender, but he's gonna give you effort as well. But his ability to put pressure on the rim and be a secondary or tertiary playmaker in the offense is pretty good. So Colin Sexton is one of the more underrated players, and he had a great year last year. I think he averaged around 18 points in the 50 or so games he played.
Yeah, and his per 36 numbers is very good too.
Yeah.
Last but not least, we got the Clippers. As crazy as it may seem, I think James Harden is the most underrated player on that team.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the news that we got with Kawhi, I think he's gonna be thrust into that position where he has to go James Harden and become the offense like he said he was gonna be. Like he said he is. He's still obviously him being somebody off the dribble one-on-one is far behind him, but his ability as a playmaker and just overall good scorer and able to get to the line and produce points is just very valuable, especially a team that lacks the offensive talent. I think he's going to have a big role this year. He's basically their second best player, and at times he's going to have to be their best player for stretches because we don't know what Kawhi is going to give us or if he's going to be able to give us anything. So for those 40 games that he has to be the best player on the team, I think he's going to go out there and show you that he's obviously not a top 25 player anymore, but he's, still has a skill set and he has the knowledge and the wherewithal to understand how to, produce points. And that's the name of the game, produce points. And he can do that with anybody.
Yeah, I agree. James Harden is still one of the best playmakers in the league, still one of the best ISO scorers in the league. He just isn't what he used to be, so people forget that. And he showed it in the playoffs last year. He was the best player for the Clippers last year in the series versus the Mavs. He was torching them. Still one of the he really can't get downhill into the paint like he could, but he can still create separation on his step back, still get downhill and create plays for others. He just can't finish at the rim as good as he used to. But James Harden is one of the most underrated players in the league, and definitely on the Clippers. He's probably still a top 40 player in the league, to be honest. 40, 45. But that's going to do it for our most underrated or the every team's most underrated player. We're going to be coming out with the overrated players pretty soon. We are working right now, so we got to push out a lot of content. It'll be a lot coming out in the next few days because NBA season is in a week and a day. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Thank you guys for supporting, and we are out.